Welcome to Everyday Linux User. In today's video we're going to be looking at user management within Linux. This is the third episode of How to Really Learn Linux. So we've started off by creating a virtual machine called Debian base, and to start the machine you can click the start button, or you can just double click it and then you just choose the first option. So what we're going to do is we're going to log in, and you'll see I've got this neo fetch thing comes up which tells me about the operating system. That was added in the last episode to do with the bash rc and the profile script, and it's important that you followed along with that. If you didn't, for this episode you're going to need to go to the etc folder, cd etc, and you're going to need to nano the profile script. And then at the bottom you're going to need to add this line here: export path equals $path $/usr/sbin. Then press Ctrl O to save and Ctrl X, then log out and log back in again. And if that's worked, when you type add user, it should say only root may add a user or group to the system. If you don't do that, then add user is not available as a program. So the first thing I'd like to do is show you what you get when you first create a user in the way we did when we installed Debian. So if I do ls, you'll see I've only got 4 folders: test, test2, test3, test4. They were well, test is just a file, test2, 3, 4 were all created during the last video. So what you won't see are folders like documents, downloads, music, pictures, things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tidy up this a little bit. So new test rm removes a file. You can do dir for folders. And that's what you should see now if you do ls. If you do ls-al, it shows you all the files in the folder. But you'll notice that we don't have all the folders that we need. So I've cleared my screen. You type the clear command to clear your screen, and the tool we're going to need is xdg-user-dirs-update. So what we're going to do is we're going to su to get into the root user, and you're going to type the root user password like that, and then you're going to type apt update. And this updates your repositories to make sure you've got the latest software within the repositories. And then you can type apt upgrade to upgrade all your packages to the latest version. And then we're going to type so I've cleared the screen again. I'm going to type apt install xdg-user-dirs, like so. It might ask you to say yes to installing it, but once that's installed we can type where is xdg-user-dirs. You're actually looking for xdg-user-dirs-update, and you can see it's in the user bin command, user bin folder. So now we've done that, we should be able to go back out to our main user and type. So we're going to clear the screen again. So I've cleared the screen, and what we're going to do is type xdg-user-dirs-update, and that's command has worked. And type ls now. You can see I've got a desktop, documents, downloads, music, pictures, public, templates and videos folder. To find out more information about a particular command, for instance this xdg-user-dirs-update command, we can use the manual. Now you're going to need to install the manual, so we're going to switch user again to root, And if I type man at the moment, nothing happens. So you need to install 2 pieces of software. So we're going to install man db and man pages. So if I do apt install man-db and then man pages, you can see it's installing the packages. Again, it might ask you to confirm that you want to install them. So I'll clear the screen, and now I can exit out of root again, and I can type man as any user, and I'm going to type xdg-user-dirs-update. And you'll get a manual describing what the command does and some of the options of it. And you'll see it says updates the current state of the user-dirs. If none exists before, then one is created based on the system default values. The list of all directories used are desktop templates and public. So you can see it gives a list of commands and switches available for that command. So man is possibly the most useful command within Linux, because if you don't know how a command works, it will show you what you need to do. So now we've got our user in place, what do you want to do if you want to add other users in? So this is where man comes in handy. You can do man add user, and you can see add user adds a whole load of things in. So you can add a normal user, you can add system users, you can add groups, you can add existing users to a group, and there's so many switches available. Now, one thing you'll know, you can press Q to exit out of the manual, by the way. If you type add user as a normal user, you'll see only root users can run the add user command. So again, we're going to have to switch user to get it to root. So su switch user, type in the password for root, and now we can use the add user command. So I'm going to add a user, and I'm going to call him Tim, and it'll ask for a password, and then you can enter some details about Tim, and then that's it. So Tim is now a user, and if I exit out and I log in as Tim, you can see he's in the same place as we were with the Gary user, where he has no folders. So there is another command you can use, Linux being Linux. So add user provides a user-friendly way of adding users, etc. But there's another command you can use called user add. And if, as a root user, I simply type user add, you'll see all the switches that are available for adding a user. So if you look down, you'll see -m or -- create -home creates the user's home directory. To add a user called Sarah, for instance, we can type user add -m and Sarah. What you'll need to do now, though, is type password and then Sarah to set a password. So when you log in as Sarah and do ls, oh, were you expecting the documents and all those folders? They're not there. The xdg-user-dirs is the only thing that creates those folders. Now there is a folder called etc/skel, and in that folder you can put the structure of things that you want to appear when you create new users. So it'll create those folders and objects within the user's environment. So that's one way of creating the folders each time. So how can you get a list of all the users in the system? Well, you can use a command called getEnt. So we're going to do getEnt password, and this doesn't do what you think it does. It actually just lists all the users in the etc password file, and you can see this gives us a list of all the users in the system. Now most of them you don't really care about, but you can see I've created lots of users: Bob, Fred, Tim, Sarah, Paul, Mike, Rachel and Rick. So now we can delete those users that we don't need. So user-del. If you want to delete everything, so the entire history or the folders underneath, you do user-del -r, so I can do don't worry about that message, it is actually deleting the users. So I'm going to do Tim so if I clear the screen and I type the getEnt password again, you'll see the only users left really are myself and root would still be there. So if you man the user-del command, it tells you that you can delete a user account and the related files. So you can force the deletion of account with -f, and -r, as you can see, removes the user's home directory. So the next thing I want to talk about is the sudo command, because I'm sure many of you are aware of it, but sudo allows you to run commands as the root user, but using your own account. But it does more than that. The sudo user allows you to run commands as other users. It doesn't have to be just root, it can be any user in the system, as long as you have permission to the sudoers group. So we're going to start off, we're going to do apt get, you have to be root for this, install sudo, because that's not installed by default with Debian unless you typed in the sudo command, sudo password when installing it. And to allow a user to use sudo, you have to type add user, the username, and then sudo, and then I should now be able to log in as Gary, and if I type sudo -b, you can see it's going to let me do it, and it doesn't come up with any errors. So sudo now works, so that means there's no more having to switch to the root user to run commands. So what I want to now show you is how to add a user and get the full list of documents, music and all that sort of stuff all in one without having to type in multiple commands. And so this goes back to our bashrc file. So if you follow the last tutorial, you know that the bashrc file runs every time you open a new shell. By adding functions into there, you can run them from your terminal. So type nano bash rc, you'll see I've got this function at the bottom, and it's called add complete user. And so it's this function add complete user, couple of brackets and then a curly bracket, and then we've got user add -m, so it's going to create the home folder, and the $1 stands for the first value you pass into the user add. So if I put user add -m Paul, then it would create it would use Paul as the first value. And then I'm doing sudo, because now I've got sudo, I can switch and pretend to be that user. So sudo, most people think it's just for running commands as the root user, but also as the root user I can then now sudo to the user account of the person that you created the user for, and I can run that xdg-user-dirs-update command, and then I can do password to set the password. So Control O to save, Control X, you'll have to exit out, and we'll log back in again. And to see this in action, we're going to do add complete user. Now I added it to the root bashrc file because I only want root to be able to do this. So add complete user, and we can add Sarah back in. And it's going to ask for a password. And now that user is created, and if I log in as Sarah and do ls, you'll see the full range of folders is there. So what I want to talk about next is when my add complete user function, it adds the user, and the root user is basically setting the password, which means that the root user could always know the password of the user. And whilst they've got admin permissions anyway, I think it's good that all users have their own password and it's unique to them and no one knows what their password is. So you kind of want them to force a password change. So if I go back to my .bashrc file, you'll see I've amended the script slightly. So what I've got now is user add -m$1, that adds a user in. Then you've got the xdg-user-dirs-update, that gives them all the folders they need, and then we've got the password file. So password will force them change a password, so the root user will have to set a password. But then I set password with -e for that user, which automatically makes the password expire. So the root user can tell the new user, say, here's your username, here's your password, and they can default to something simple. But as soon as they enter that password, it's going to ask them to change it. And I'll show you that now. So Control-O, Control-X. I'm going to exit out. I want to log back in as root. And we're going to do add complete user fill. And it's asked for a password. And you can see it says password updated successfully and then password changed. Now, so if I log in as Phil, I have to enter the password set by the root admin. And it says you're required to change your password immediately. So that means Phil can't log in, no one can log in as Phil without Phil changing that password. And he has to change it. You're supposed to enter the current password, I forgot to do that, so we'll try again. So you log in as Phil, and it says you're required to change your password. So type in the original password, type in the new password, repeat it, and now Phil is the only one who knows the password. The root user does not know the password for Phil. And so that's a good way of creating user accounts. So what have we learned in this guide? In this guide we've learnt how to create the default folders like documents and music and pictures, etc. for a user. We've learnt how to add a user to the sudo command so that they can run commands as a root user. We've learnt how to add users, delete users, how to set passwords, how to create users so that they can change their own password at login and things like that. And that's the end of the guide. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Linux User.